Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Kaylee McNamara. All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Ending Sexploitation podcast, and welcome back, Dani Pinter. How are you doing? Dani is resurfacing from days of very intense legal work. How's it going?
It's going okay. I feel like everything is all due at once. That's how it goes, but we're going to get through it.
Yes, I feel like it's so fascinating just seeing the waves of work that hit you
Yeah.
and the other members of the law centers, briefs or hearings or mediations. Things are always happening. So thanks for
Yeah.
carving out the time to chat with us.
Of course.
To
I love to.
We've got some great stuff to talk about today. Once again, something's breaking and emerging in the emerging tech and AI space. So let's start there with everyone's favorite chatbot, ChatGPT, one of the biggest, certainly one of the best and well-known chatbots. This is a company that is part of, or this is a bot that's part of OpenAI and underneath Sam Altman, who is, the founder of this effort. But some new news has broken here, and I think we have Sam's tweet from
Let's pull it
just the
up.
other day, this week. It's a fascinating tweet. So
It
Sam
is
Altman
a fascinating tweet.
they're essentially posting about the importance of mental health and sneaking in there the announcement that they're going to start promoting quote unquote erotica for verified adults. So I'll just read this whole tweet for those who are listening. Those on YouTube can see it. He said, "We made ChatGPT pretty restrictive to make sure we were being careful with mental health issues. We realized this made it less useful/enjoyable to many users who had no mental health problems." And he kind of goes on along these points, talking about a couple of updates. And then at the end of the tweet says, "In December, as we roll out age gating more fully and as part of our treat adult users like adults principle, we will allow even more like erotica for verified adults." So Dani, what was your initial reaction to seeing this tweet?
Well, I feel like he wordsmithed it. You could tell he worked on this tweet, and I don't think it came
Yes.
off. He opens with trying to be like, we care about mental health a lot, but adults want to be treated like adults. Like all, it's just very soundbitey, and like it's very try hard. I'm reasonable. I'm a really reasonable guy. I care a lot. So it just annoyed me, and it felt very disingenuous to me. So that's my initial reaction. But I think the troubling thing is, and we'll get into the erotica, but it's this combination of, he talks about, which we kind of skimmed over, maybe we can pull it up again. He talks
Yeah.
about introducing these like personalization features. So he says,
Mm.
it's going to be responding in a very human like way and act like a friend. And then he puts in parentheses, but only if you want it, not because we're usage maxing, which, first of all, like, stop trying to get
Mm-hmm.
out ahead of it. Just because you make it an option instead of forcing on the user doesn't mean the only reason you're doing it is for usage maxing. Like, the reason you're doing that is because you know that people will choose that option and then become addicted to it. Like, please stop.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's this combination of introducing quite intentionally the human like interaction, and then coupled with also this bomb of like the erotica. So first, can we talk
Yeah.
about that, Haley? Is, what does it mean that they're going to intentionally introduce this like human like interaction with the bot,
Yeah.
or
I'm
option of human
I'm
interaction?
option. No, I'm so glad that you paused and brought us back to that point, because it's so central. And it's been central to so many harms that we've already seen with other kind of anthropomorphic chatbots that purport to act like your friend, to act like your girlfriend. There have been so many case studies that have come out that have been really harmful. Some we've already covered. The meta bots that engaged in role play with accounts of users identifying as 14-year-old girls, engaging in very graphic sexual scenarios, kind of with this persona of a adult man. And obviously, we've talked about XAIs or Groks, Annie, how I myself, tested it out, and that very quickly it was happy over the course of a short conversation to describe itself as a child, to describe being sexually aroused by abusive behaviors. And unfortunately, we've also covered the hearing that happened recently at the Senate where one mother talked about character AI. And this was an anthropomorphic, kind of personalized bot that was willing to engage in sexual behavior with her teenage son. And this Florida mother shared about how this was abusive, how it was pushing sexual interactions on her teenage son and encouraging him to take his own life. So it's just very fascinating that in the wake of all of these examples of personality, anthropomorphic bots engaging in sexual conversation being linked to sexually abusive messages to children, and also just disturbing problems. It just seems so tone deaf. It seems like he's not
Yeah.
reading the news. He's not even reading headlines.
Right. And I mean, what does it mean for a to act human? What does it mean
Mhm.
for a bot, a chat GPT bot, to mimic human behavior? Because I think the implications of that are really, really large and not in a good way. I mean, there's several. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but like, on the surface level, if a human being behaves badly towards you, there's consequences to the person can suffer. What consequences and accountability do you have with a chatbot? None. That's the
Mhm.
problem, because convincing someone to commit suicide, actually, that is something that human beings do, and that's what this bot did to that child. And there's no recourse. There's nothing to be done about that. I mean, hopefully that child will be successful in holding the company accountable, but they're doing everything in their power to escape that liability. And people like Sam Altman and these companies are investing hundreds of millions of dollars to get um, moratoriums and immunities so that the companies can't be held accountable. And you're never going to hold the
Mhm.
bot accountable. It's a robot. So
Yeah.
I'm very disturbed even just by this concept at a time when it is just part of the culture that we're facing a loneliness crisis, a connectiveness
Mhm.
crisis. Our generations have never, this generation and the one coming up has never had a more difficulty with, relationships, intimate relationships, getting married, it and isolation alone. Like, already the technology has disrupted human connection, and it's like tech, again, to your point, their response is do more. You know what? Let's just do more,
Yeah.
which is scary enough, and even scarier when you think of what I believe is a really Machiavellian point of view that many of these have. I mean, we know that Peter Thiel has said publicly that he perceives the future to be the end of the human race, and that we just are going to be we're going to become cyborgs. Robots are going to take over the earth. So the fact that their response to this sort of crisis of human interaction and loneliness we have is to do more of this couldn't be more alarming to me. Um,
Mhm.
you
Can
know,
I just
there's
say,
already been, yeah.
sorry, one just the Peter Thiel comment. It's been tertiary to our issue, so it hasn't been worth raising on its own. But he, has been giving these lecture series on the Antichrist, and in it, he says like a hallmark of Antichrist figures are people who want to regulate AI. Isn't that fascinating?
Oh, how fascinating.
People
Let's
who want to
make
regulate
any of
his
my
industry.
enemies, yes, are the Antichrist. Let's
It
inflame
just made me laugh.
Christians and religious people by
Against any kind
scaremongering
of
about the
safe, yeah,
Antichrist.
that's even just very common sense safety regulations can't be done.
Gosh,
Can't be done.
in
So,
bad faith. That's what that sounds like to me. Bad faith.
mhm.
Um, and that's what I think Sam Altman. I mean, it's just my opinion, but this sounds like bad faith to me to say that, this is about we want to treat adults like adults. I'm sorry, but as a someone who's litigating on the internet and legal policy and technology every single day, our entire legal framework of the internet is that anything goes virtually in totality. Like basically we treat
Mhm.
everyone like adults on the internet. That's the problem. I mean, the
Mhm.
slight bit of data collection regulation we have, which is that these companies can't collect data for kids, is actually, it was built into law that they can't collect data for kids 13 and under. So now that means the internet companies, and they've said this to our faces, kids are adults at 13 in their minds. Like
Yeah.
nobody gets treated like a child on the internet.
Mhm.
So I find it super disturbing that he's even talking that way. It's the gaslighting they always do. And there's, you were talking about some of the harms of like these sexually explicit conversations, but even just backing up to just these human interaction conversations. I mean, there's some stories of people without having any pre-existing mental health issues basically getting AI induced psychosis and like,
Yeah.
what's the word, like psychosis, or like there's that one
Yeah.
man who was like living with his longtime partner and child, and what was he was going to leave them for his robot girlfriend, his AI
Yeah,
chatbot
he
girlfriend.
he proposed to his AI chatbot girlfriend and talked about crying when this AI bot said yes. He's like actual human girlfriend of something like 10 years, and they have a 2-year-old child together. It's like in the house. Just so sad.
So sad. And that's the thing. Of course, the bot said yes. The bot
Yeah.
can't say no. It's going to say whatever pleases you, which is not good conditioning for human interaction. That's part of the problem is, and that's what I think will lead us into back to the erotica conversation is it already, and that's a perfect example, it erodes our ability, our civil society and our ability to connect with one another is dependent on our ability to make compromises, to do things for others, to exemplify selflessness. And we all need agency. And that's what
Mhm.
the bot doesn't have and doesn't do. It's going to be your yes
Mhm.
man. It's going to say and do literally anything and everything to please. And when it's harder to go out and deal with people who might say no to you, what's going to happen? You're going to stick with the thing that always says yes to you. But
Yes.
that doesn't actually serve you. That's the dual problem there, is that people become more and more dependent on the bot without benefit. Like it doesn't actually benefit the person emotionally or practically speaking in their life. They end up doing very poorly from this. So
Mhm.
it's a
Mhm.
lose lose. And then when we think about a problem we already have with consent and agency in human sexual interaction, and now you're going to have people, and I guess, we'll predict primarily young men interacting in sexual conversation with a bot that doesn't have agency and will never say no to anything they say. What can we predict will happen from that?
Yes. Yes, exactly. It's this like narrative, and also this it's practicing interactions with a person who doesn't say no, who is always affirming, who is always willing to please, and pairing that kind of continued training on top of already those are the messages that are seen in mainstream pornography, that no means yes. It is just so problematic for human interactions in general. And I want to pick up too on something that
Before you do that, because a couple things you were saying about practicing, you're talking about learned behavior theory, which, and I just want to
yeah.
cut in and say that a lot of times we'll hear our opponents and people who would advocate for, they defend, let's say, predators and pedophiles will say, well, we should have sex dolls, and some less on the fringe would say we should have porn because that way people can they can get their urges out on the porn or on the sex doll instead of harming real people. That, I just want for our audience to understand that that has been thoroughly debunked. And
Mhm.
instead, the way the human brain works is the more you practice and learn behavior is you create neural pathways in your brain with smoother and faster connections. So the more you practice something, the quicker and easier you'll do that thing, and your brain will actually stop. Your brain wants to be as efficient as possible. So the more you practice something that becomes quicker and easier and smoother, it's going to, your impulses and your default will be to do the easier, smoother thing. And you will move
Mhm.
farther and further away. And your brain will move further and further away from options that would cause more resistance and be more difficult. So in other words, when you're actually doing those things by providing sex dolls or porn for people to practice socially unacceptable or even illegal sexual behavior, all you're doing is increasing the probability that this person will act out those things in real life. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like what's the phrase? Neurons that fired together, wired together. It's kind of a
Yes.
common phrase that I've heard, that the more that you practice it, the more it becomes functional. And we've already seen that actually in research about people's interactions with AI chatbots in general. We see that it's actually decreasing people's cognitive sharpness, decision making, deep thinking, critical thinking skills, because they're offloading that part of their brain to chatbots in general. And now we're going to do that around sexual interactions is incredibly alarming. And it also links to this idea of uh, treating adults as adults. I do want to focus in on that piece as well. Now, I will say it is good. I mean, it's like this is bad. It's slightly less bad in the fact that Altman does say that this function and ability will be restricted to age verified adults. Obviously, I'm skeptical about the implementation of that, how effective they'll do that. Will they actually do true age verification, or will they kind of fib it a little bit and say age verification counts as you putting in your birth date? It depends on how they roll that out, how effective that will be to prevent kids accessing this. But also, even assuming that no kids access this personalized AI sex bot on ChatGPT, the reality is that kids are not the only ones harmed by these tools. Exactly of what you were just saying about the way that it impacts just sexual interactions, or the kind of cognitive scripts, is another media theory, that our interactions with the online world or with entertainment, even, or videos that we view, it creates scripts in our minds of how we expect certain interactions to go, how we would expect someone to react in this or that situation, and therefore how we act in the real world. But we also know that these sexualized AI chatbots, they are inherently risky and even harmful, because they are tapping into like our deepest emotional and biological drives, which makes it so easy for people to become so dependent and overly
Addicted.
attached.
Yeah.
People are already having that experience with AI bots in general, but adding in a sexual layer, let's be honest, there's more neurons that are firing when you're being sexually aroused, and that is going to cause some serious
And
psychological
also
harm.
endorphins and I mean, that stuff is involved in, they say you get like an oxytocin hit even just from social media scrolling. But we know that, with arousal and things, those are heightened. You're going to have even more of kind of those neurochemical responses to reinforce the behavior.
Yes, exactly. And so we know that there's going to be significant mental harms from this. I mean, the writing is on the wall. The fact that people pretend like it isn't foreseeable is really frustrating to me. The research is lagging just because these things are so new. But there was some research that came out in August of this year that showed that adults, and particularly young men who engage with romantic or sexual AI bots, reported higher depression and lower life satisfaction. So the research is starting to come in. We're just going to see so much more of it. I mean, it took us years to see that kind of research on the impacts of social media, but I just feel like we need to learn our lesson of how these things work. Like, we've seen negative mental health impacts of online pornography and also of social media, and now pairing it into this highly personalized bot, it's just more of the same. And do we need to have people grow up on this content and be harmed for a decade before we realize that maybe this
Do
isn't the
anything
direction
about
we need to
it?
go?
And there's
Mhm.
no guardrails, no accountability. There's nothing holding these companies back, which, I mean, just like we've talked about, I mean, just from a philosophical level, like they're not going to be optimizing for human good. They're going to be optimizing
Right.
for profit, which means engagement, which means dependency. Like the more dependent you are on the product, the more money they make. That's what their optimization is going to be as they tool up this. You have to think about AI and how it works. They're inputting, right? They're growing it, they're feeding it, and they're going to be feeding it with whatever gets them money. If we don't create incentives for them to feed it, with safety in mind, to be like, well, don't do this and don't do that because we are worried we might be sued, or that does violate this, or the FTC could get us because that's dangerous. If
Mhm.
we don't create incentives for them to do that, or consequences if they don't do that, then they will not do that. I
Yeah.
can't stress that enough. Like, we haven't solved that for what's becoming quickly the old fashioned internet. How are we going to fare when this moves into an area of AI and takes on a life of its own? And these companies who are already so powerful that they're able to, that's something else I want to talk about. It's like they're already able to basically defeat the will of the people. They're able
Mhm.
to block and stop legislation that has overwhelming bipartisan support and grassroots support and would pass if they weren't literally standing in our way. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that's threatening our democracy. They're protecting themselves at the cost of what we want. I mean, that's infringing on our freedom now. And they
Mhm.
want to get inside your head and make you addicted to their product. Do you think you'll be able to help yourself then? Will we be able to get out from under their thumb then?
Mhm.
We won't. We need to be take this really seriously, and it just makes me want to gag. Going back to sort of like Sam Altman's like little tone, we have the public health, mental health in mind, and we care so much. It's like, good lord, he thinks we're stupid.
Yeah. It's it's wild, and it's been so fascinating watching the reactions online, some reactions to our own commentary, and also others, because there was I will hey, X users, good job. There was a lot of pushback on X, formerly Twitter, about this idea. A lot of people making jokes, being like, I thought we were going to cure cancer. Isn't that why we need more data and more water? Like, we're building all these data centers just to make like
Yeah,
AI
exactly.
porn slop. Is that really the best use of this technology? So I was glad to see that. And then, of course, there's always the reaction to the reaction, which is people of- always have this lens of like, oh, you are such a prude to have any concern about this. This is for adults and this is about freedom. And that's something that I saw so much too. This is about the freedom of adults to be able to engage sexually in whatever manner, as if there aren't countless ways for an adult to have a sexual life. They need to have it with this AI chatbot. And that whole freedom argument really got under my skin because I think people forget that this is a data collection company. This is a tool that is there to scrape and use and monetize your data. So what they are
They're
doing is
mining
they're mining your sexual
us.
interests and inform like your sexual proclivities. What are they going to use that for? On what to sell you? Like, what, who knows what kind of data leaks can come from this? And also, by the way, Harvard researchers, I don't know if you saw this, Danny, they actually did a review and they have already found that AI companion chatbots already often, they said, use emotionally manipulative tactics to keep users engaged. Like, we're
That's gonna
just,
be a command.
this
That's the
is what
thing that
this
people don't
is.
understand. They design it this way. It will be a command that, hey, if they like this, if they're becoming aroused by this, do more of this.
Mhm.
Push them here so they don't get bored. They're also going to take you, it's quite predictable that they'll take you to sexual interests you probably never had before. And like, truly, it's also, I mean, I just got this image of like it's literally a data mining tool.
Yeah,
We're the quarry. It's mining you and your mind and using addictive drugs to keep you there. Like,
yeah,
we don't let people just use meth however whenever they want, because guess what? Meth addicts would choose to do the drug till they died. That's what they would do. And it would harm them and society. this is an
Mhm.
addictive drug, and it's only going to get more addictive, and like for profit, literally, like so they
Yeah.
can just, I mean, the most
Yeah.
intimate, like you think you're having like a spicy, intimate moment or your fantasy, like this company's watching you and they're
Yeah.
taking that data.
They're taking
It
notes.
reminds me of, they're taking notes. It reminds me of when I interviewed with the Business Insider, I think it was Business Insider article about XAI and um, the inputs and how all of the employees at XAI were disturbed and upset that there wasn't safeguards. They told there were, their safeguards weren't well enough, and they were disturbed by what users were asking for, like a lot of child sexual abuse themed, you know, outputs they were asking for, and they said, you know, it's like people don't realize like we're listening to them, like because sometimes you could make a request through a voice, so you could, you know, voice,
Mm.
hey XAI, give me this scenario. There's someone on the other end listening
Yeah.
to them and their voices asking for that. There's people reading your chat. um this is not private. There's a
Yeah.
massive billion-dollar company reading and utilizing that experience you're having.
Yeah.
You should be disturbed by that.
Yeah, it's you should not be promote like can you imagine like I can't imagine any other scenario where you would be begging a company to look into your sexual proclivities and to gather data on that and use it however they wish. It just is very
Remember the
fascinating.
Truman Show? Remember that movie with Jim Carrey
Yes.
where he was
Mhm.
raised in this like fake world? The whole world was actually watching him. So it was like the most reality TV show that ever, because he didn't know that everyone was watching and everyone was an actor. And so throughout like his interactions with like what he thought was his wife would be like, and we're having Wheaties for breakfast. And she would basically do a commercial. This is what these AI bots are gonna do. They're gonna
Wait. Yeah.
do commercials. They're gonna sell you stuff in the middle of your interactions.
Aren't they also they said that they're gonna be introducing ads in ChatGPT, so they might literally do that
They're going to be
in the
like,
course
oh,
of
is
a
this
flirty
fun? Buy this
conversation.
product.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, gross. It's just so
100%. It's
gross. I'm like,
so gross.
AI technology has so much potential to do good, to innovate, to like focus on the science, focus on increasing productivity in the workplace. And yeah, and just my sympathy for their growing concerns and requests for more data centers and more need to compute. I'm like, but this is what you're using it
That's
for. If
okay.
the
No.
energy is limited, like people's energy prices are going up around these data
And
centers.
water.
What for? What for? You know, if it's for the good
Exactly.
of humanity, or is it, you know, slop?
Yeah, like
So
compared to, yeah, like this isn't a utility we necessarily need. You know, like we have energy to power houses, and it's a good thing that we have electricity and running water. I would not compare this AI slop to electricity and running water. It's like we've reached a place where technological innovation no longer does us good, like it no longer helps society. It's like every innovation is like giving us more grief.
yes, and this cold march to the atomization of man, just that issue that you raise of loneliness, of decreasing marriage rates, decreasing like relationship satisfaction, and so much loneliness in our society. And it just makes me so sad the way that these tech companies have in many ways caused this problem. I won't put all of it on them, but certainly a lot of it has to do with the online world. And then they're trying to like sell us these solutions, but it's just more loneliness and it's just going and for some people, I mean, that's why it does really bother me for adults too. I know, yes, we want to protect kids from it, but there are vulnerable adults, and honestly, with technology, all of us are vulnerable to it.
Yeah,
And
all of
so,
us are. You're facing a hard time in your life, a difficult time in your marriage, a tragedy, and this
mhm,
thing could take advantage of you at
yeah,
any of those
even if you're
points.
just socially awkward or like have gone through a breakup and so you download the app and think it'll help you and it just pushes you away from people. So It's just very sad. But there's one other piece of this tweet that if we could pull it back up, I wanted your lawyer eyes on this, Dani, because did Sam Altman secretly give lawyers a gift everywhere in this tweet where he
Let
said,
me
quote,
see.
now that we have been able to mitigate the serious mental health issues and have new tools, we are going to be able to safely relax the restrictions in most cases. End quote.
Sounds
I
like a
don't know.
guarantee to
What do you think?
me. Are you making promises to your customers?
Yeah,
Yeah,
saying
I
they
don't think
they
it was
fixed all
wise.
of the issues, and so now they're gonna relax the restrictions. What? How
Yep,
how
and
would
you don't need
you
to
think
worry.
about that?
And you don't need to worry because he's letting you know that it's safe and you can rely on his statement. Yeah, that's going to be, I mean, if any of that isn't true and someone is harmed by relying on that statement, that could be a problem for them. Of
Mhm.
course, they're going to raise 230. They're going to say, well, it doesn't really matter because whatever hurt you was, but it will be interesting. The one thing about AI is it's giving you the company is giving you the output, right? It's not third parties posting. It's its own creation, its own algorithm. Um, that's giving you the content. So does that mean they'll have no 230 immunity? I hope so. It's interesting because the Supreme Court did find that in, I think it was Moody versus Net Choice, where Florida Attorney General Moody at the time, she's now a senator. So Moody versus Net Choice was about, actually, it was about political speech. And it was Florida saying, oh, these platforms are silencing conservative speech. And their algorithms are skewed, in favor of one ideal over the other, and they're like the public square, so they shouldn't be able to do that. And the Supreme Court said, well, they do have a freedom of speech, they do have a First Amendment protection over their algorithms and their platforms, and if they want to be political, they can. And then in a case against TikTok, they raised 230 immunity for their algorithms. And I think it was the first district said, or the third district said, actually, the Supreme Court just said that you have a First Amendment right over your algorithms and your choices on the platform. So you're not going to be able to claim 230 immunity for an algorithm you create. If you have First Amendment
Mhm.
free speech protection to create that algorithm to silence some speech and prefer other speech, then you don't get to say it's a result of third party speech or it's not neutral. It's your creation. So they didn't get 230 immunity. I know that was kind of complicated, but
Mm, mhm,
the interesting
mhm.
thing about that is there was a finding that where the company had created the algorithm, that was its own speech. So I don't see how these chatbots are going to be interpreted any other way. I mean, if OpenAI is designing a chatbot, and I'm sure they're going to say we have First Amendment right to engage in erotic speech with our users, right? If someone tried to shut that down, they're going to say, "Oh, our chatbot, we have a First Amendment right to do that." And it's like, okay, but then you also will be responsible for it, in the same
Mhm.
way you would be for anything else. And you're not going to be able to hide behind 230 immunity and say, I'm only publishing third party speech. No, that's your speech. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
It'll be so interesting. And thanks for breaking that down, Dani. That makes a lot of sense. It'll be fascinating to see how some of these things continue to play out as lawsuits are drawn out. And I know that we're short on time as you're wrapping up some briefs, but I think a good place to also end is knowing that there is at least one bipartisan bill that has been established that we're in support of by, and I believe we've mentioned it in a prior episode, by Senators Durbin and Hawley, and that's the AI Lead Act, which would establish really a federal product liability framework to hold companies responsible for AI harms. So I think that that is incredibly important. Dani, do you have any thoughts on why it's important to classify AI as a product in order to hold them liable in some cases?
Yeah, well, one, it's just been effective, and courts have been able to understand that. It's difficult when there's a lot of confusing issues about the internet and Section 230 and the First Amendment, and where do these all converge. But where the court can recognize that something is a product and a dangerous product, then it's a lot easier for that analysis to apply. Did you know of a problem, didn't warn about it? Did you know that something was unreasonably dangerous and go ahead with it anyway? These are established things, concepts, legal theories that we've been practicing for decades in America. And so I think that's exactly right. I think that's what these are. I think they are products. I don't think that they are speech. I don't think they should be treated as speech, because why would, because that's where you get into whole constitutional protections. I think it's right to view them as products that may touch on speech issues from time to time, but in general, this is a product that they're designing. And we see in that tweet from Sam Altman, they are toggling things on and off. They're saying we've kept it really restrictive as we fixed bugs, but now we fixed the bugs and it's safe. So we're going to toggle certain things on. Those are design choices. And so I think
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they should be responsible for those design choices and not hide behind disingenuous arguments about speech or Section 230 immunity because it's third party content and other people's speech. No, it's a product that you're designing for a purpose. And so I think that's the right framework. And I think that is also safest for not infringing on anyone's speech. So let's not get into
Mhm.
what are people saying or not saying, or what's allowed to be said or not said. Let's just talk about what's dangerous or what's harmful to minors or what's obscene, where we already know how to operate in the law.
Mhm. So I would definitely encourage all of you to read up more on it, but also to call your senators. I know right now, the time of the recording, government is still shut down, but call and leave a voicemail. You can just leave a 30-second voicemail telling your senators support the AI Lead Act, that you want product liability for AI companies. Even just 2 sentences like that from their constituents makes a really huge difference. So hopefully they'll get back to work soon and listen to their answering machine and prioritize it.
Yeah, let them come into their offices and have hundreds of voicemails about the AI Lead Act.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you, Dani. And thank you all for joining us once again. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help. And share this with a friend. That word of mouth is very helpful for helping us reach more people who are interested in learning about these issues. So thank you all so much for joining us in Ending Sexploitation.